everyone to part 2 of our 3-part segment where we're going to have an opportunity to talk about baseball. And certainly excited to spend some time with our 2 guests, both of whom are current Hanshin Tigers, outfielder Jerry Sands and reliever Jon Edwards.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to spend a few minutes with both these guys chatting a little earlier, and I'm going to get to know them alongside you guys. So I'm really excited for this chance. I'm impressed by their journeys and the journey that has brought them to where they are today in 2020 to put on a Tigers uniform. All right, guys, without any further ado, let's just jump right in on this. What did it feel like for you guys when you got off the plane for the first time? And were you surprised by the amount of media that was present when you came off? Jon, you can go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, I was really tired. After being on the plane, I think I stayed awake until about the last hour, and then I fell asleep. So I was just waking up, and I was dragging all of my luggage out there, and I was pretty surprised when I saw all those cameras flashing. I was like, I'm sure those pictures were not great, but so.
That's awesome. So I'm picking up a few things from you though. So you want to eat really healthy, and then we got to make sure we get the good side on the pictures. Is that where we're at? We all have. Is that where we're rolling with this?
Yeah,
that's outstanding.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Jerry, what about you, man?
Yeah, it was a battle. I mean, you got that ride, and then you're toting all your luggage, like Jon said, and you got all your luggage, and then they're wanting you to post pictures after. You know what I mean? I had just put a decent shirt on and a jacket on just to get off the plane because they said so. I was assuming there was going to be 1 or 2 photographers there, and you know what I mean. You get off and it's just a battle to keep your eyes open with all the flashes, and like I said, you got all your luggage, and people are trying to get you to sign right off the bat. So it was fun. It was surprising. Obviously, you see how well known and followed the Tigers are just from the following of you getting off the plane. So it was fun.
Cool. Yeah. I remember being on a flight that was a long way away from home and getting off, and like you said, you just feel like, man, I'm trying to get my bearings, and the next thing you know, you're in that setting. So it's unique. I remember I had prepared, I tried to stumble through some Japanese words, and it's so funny. I look back on those now, and after having at the time really had very, very little, if any, experience speaking Japanese, the little bit with guys trying to coach me up before I got there, and I completely mangled the words. It was rough, but at the end of the day, I have so many great memories. I remember actually being a little bit like nervous, which is interesting because had spent a good bit of time in front of media in the U.S. and I think it's just all the emotions of arriving in Japan and getting there, and now all these people are in front of you, and I just remember being a little nervous. But man, what an amazing feeling when you finally step foot over there. But just the media and just how present they were, like you said, shows how much they care about their team. And as you walk through this journey, and I had ups and downs certainly. One of the biggest things for me looking back on it is just you have to stay the course as it pertains to the media. There's some times where I wasn't always pleased with how I reacted maybe in certain situations. It was a chance for me to allow people to realize just how broken I am as an individual and no different than anybody else. But yeah, man, the eyes are on you, and I think you guys are aware of that at this point. I have some amazing relationships with some of the guys in the media, some really good guys there. But everybody's got a job to do, and I think it's very obvious the minute you get off that plane there in Japan. So anyway, thanks for sharing about that experience for both of you. Next, first day of spring camp in Okinawa. What stood out to you, Jon?
What part of it was the fans, just you pull up, and there was more fans as spring went, but they're the same thing. Like, there's cameras everywhere. There was media. There was fans. Jerry would probably agree with me on this. The stretching was a little different than the U.S. going through that first 30-minute stretch. I think there was one stretch where we had to put each other on. We kind of work on the T-spine or whatever. We put each other on each other's backs, and all of us are big guys, so we kind of looked at each other like, I don't know if we should do that, So. But yeah, just the whole process was a little bit different than what I was used to. But but it was a good time. I was having fun with it and enjoying it. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, I would say the same. That you get out of the van or off the bus, and you're right into that 30-minute stretch, and then you go right into American Fungo, and you're running across the field, and I'm anticipating an American style a little bit, like, hey, it's your first day, work yourself in, and these guys are ready. It's they're 6 months deep of just running as hard as they can. So that was a little eye opener for me of like, these guys go at it every single day for the whole time. So it was refreshing at the same time. Korea has started to kind of transfer into more of like an American style, how they kind of do things, of more of the rest and the kind of loosening the ways of the old school. You know what I mean? I get tired and I'm like, man, this is tough stuff. And I look over and Fukudome is 43 over there. He's doing it. So I'm like, all right, I got to lock it in a little bit here. But yeah, it was refreshing that like these guys they're passionate. They work hard, and we lost some weight. I'll tell you that. We were running around all day.
I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but when I saw 3 cages on the field for BP, that was a little shocking.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, or the live BP was kind of like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, or you know what? I mean, again, like you said, that 30-minute stretch, you got to get your mind right, though. You got to get it ready for the day you're about to have.
Oh yeah.
You know what? The one thing I always said in regards to it, I know you guys feel the same way, but like, you know, we signed up for it. That's what I always told the guys. Well, we signed up for it, so we got to figure out a way to make this work. I took some pride the first day that I was gonna run right with them. I was like, you know what? I'm part of this team. I am not taking I'm not taking a playoff, right? And I got to the end of the day, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I don't know how I'm gonna make it through this whole spring camp. And slowly but surely, as the camp was going, we had like the 30 and over group, which was like the senpai group that didn't have the afternoon stuff as much or whatever it was. And I started allowing myself to become more American as camp went, because there's no way I was going to keep up with all those guys the whole time. But Jon, starting with you from a pitcher's perspective, is there anything thus far that stands out to you in regards to the hitters that you see that, and comparing them to what you faced in the States and what you're seeing there now? Is there anything from what you've had thus far that stands out as a pitcher?
Yeah, I think as a pitcher, kind of what you hear is just the way that they're contact hitters, the way their approach. You know, you'll see them shoot balls into the stands just trying to foul a pitch off, versus I feel like, you know, if you're pitching at home in the American League, you know, even if that guy's got 2 strikes, sometimes he's still taking a pretty good hack at the ball. So, you know, and then I've noticed from a pitching perspective, watching the sequencing of the pitchers, the way they use their pitches is a little bit different, I think, compared to some of the, you know, the ways that we've been taught in the U.S. So, you know, yeah, for me, I've always kind of admired Japan and the style of baseball. I've always watched them and thought, wow, those guys look like they move really well, and they look like they have really good mechanics and things like that. And I've always been kind of interested and curious as to what their approach was. And so for me, it's kind of been fun to learn and see firsthand exactly how they, you know, go about learning the game of baseball. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I hear that a lot, and as a teammate, you watch it. It's like sometimes you wonder, are the guys even trying to put the ball in play? Are they literally just trying to foul the ball off at this point? You know, like it's amazing how they have an ability to get their hands to contact. I did check out some of your video, so I did see there's some pretty nice depth and some bite to that slider. So you got a chance to maybe get underneath those barrels a little bit.
Yeah.
But have they messed with you at all yet on a splitter? I mean, that's like the go-to pitch. I feel like every dude that I faced in the U.S. that came over to Japan, inevitably by the time they left, they added the split. Have they had the fork ball? Have they messed with you on that yet?
Yeah, we were kind of. It really wasn't them. Me and Fujikawa were just talking about it, and honestly, me watching them all throw it, I was kind of like, oh, I kind of want to play around with that. But surprisingly enough, being as big as I am, I kind of have more stubby fingers, and my hands don't split very well. So I can't really, it's like I was trying to force that ball in there to get a good split grip or a fork ball, so it really wasn't a pitch that seemed. They were like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't do that," because I was really trying to force it in there. So yeah.
We'll give it some time. Inevitably, regardless of your physiology, they're going to have you with that ball between the fingers.
Yeah.
They're going to have you going. But you know, we're gonna go ahead and stick with what 6'5", is that right? I don't want to misspeak, but the 6'5" leverage that you're already creating downhill, and we'll ride that out to start the year.
Yeah.
Jerry, what about you, man? Obviously, you, as you've mentioned, you played in the KBO the past year and a half, two seasons, whatever, and then you were in the U.S. and based off of those experiences and facing Japanese pitchers, what stood out to you?
Yeah, like I said, the KBO experience has been big for me. Just understanding kind of the Asian way of pitching and staying behind the ball much more and spinning it. And then, like you mentioned, the split and the fork ball. Pretty much everybody's got it in their back pocket. So you have to be obviously aware of that. But even the breaking balls, I feel like they throw much more curve balls here. Just the way that they're behind the ball, I think it's easier for them to spin a curveball than it is to actually work on a biting depth slider. So yeah, like I said, I think the depth of rotations and the depth of bullpens over here, whether it's just the more players to pull from. But I've been impressed by there were some really good pitchers in Korea. I just think there's a little bit deeper of a pool here that allow them to have a little bit more depth, and you get a few more guys in your rotation here and a few more guys in the bullpen, I think, that have the better elite stuff. So it's been fun to watch, and it's been, like I said, it's been one of those challenges that I'm trying to figure out sequences and figure out who has the good splitter. I know they're probably all going to throw it to me, but who has the good one? And it's just one of those adjustment periods that I've obviously been working on and trying to get your timing all in one. And then with the starting and the stopping and the different things, it's just been kind of one of those weird things. But like I said, there's some really good arms over here, and you just try to do the best you can.
No, that's great, man. Yeah, and I know. Look, it's so tough. Look, as athletes, we have to own everything, right? And none of us are gonna cast off anything on make an excuse. As we know, excuses are a hindrance to our growth. But I can't help but notice that you've only had 15 at bats, from what I could tell after coming back from the pandemic, and 19 total. Right. And I really saw, like in the video that I saw, it looked like you were starting to back the ball pretty well. You hit a home run to center field. And that's one of the things that's one of the things that I definitely had to deal with when I first got there as a hitter was the split or the fork. The depth on that pitch was a big factor, because it was unlike at the time for me in 2010, and maybe this is slightly different for you guys, but we were a lot more east-west at the time in the U.S., a lot more sinker slider. And so these guys, to create their leverage using that split with that down action to it off the heater, and they stay behind their fastball pretty well, right? I told guys, even at 89 to 91 miles an hour, the ride that they get and the way that they follow behind their body. I came back to the U.S. in 16, and I'm facing 94, and I'm not trying to make light of it, but like I didn't find 91 to be that distinctly different than 94, 95 in the U.S. So they create some challenges for sure. So be encouraged in the fact it gets better. It definitely gets better in time. I guess I was known to take a few notes. I nerded out maybe on my notebook. I was writing down, because we get in these meetings and they're telling me he's got a shoot-though and he's got this and that. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like at the end of the day, those meetings are super valuable in a lot of respects in terms of sequencing and figuring out 0-1 counts is when they like to pitch in a little bit more. 2 strikes, they're willing to try to jam you, get it a little tighter. They're going to probably pitch you backwards a lot more often in sequencing. But I remember, so those meetings were super valuable, but I remember I was like, man, you know what? At the end of the day, which direction does this ball move? What slot am I seeing this ball out of? What's his go-to pitch? And all of those things. And I'm taking little notations, because I was like, man, I've got to stay ahead of the curve on these guys. So all the best to both of you as it pertains to that. But I get fired up when I start hearing you guys talk about it, because I just remember the process for myself. Yeah. One of the things that most all athletes can attest to, right? It's the reality that we stay in the game long enough, inevitably we're going to face the adversity. And honestly, we know that it really isn't all that much different than life, right? And that's where these parallels between the sport that we play and life and the ups and the downs, they're real, right? So are there any experiences and we touched on this a little bit in the previous segment, but are there any experiences to this point in your career that you'll draw on as you take on a new culture and a new league, Jon?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have one specific one that comes to mind the other day, but what I can share is like just a week or so ago or so, we went to Hiroshima, and I threw down there, and I had just a really rough outing. I mean, I could not throw a strike to save my life. I walked 5 straight guys, and I was like, I don't know if this has ever happened before, but it, you know, by the end of it, though, I was riding back on the train, and I was thinking to myself, you know, there's been plenty of times when I've had a similar experience where it was just really tough, and you know what? And I came back and I pitched well again the next time, and you know, my career went on. So for me, you know, I can think back on some of those times when I did have similar type outings, or maybe where I was going through a rough patch, and there's been plenty of times where I was going through a rough patch, and to be honest, I was ready to quit and give up. And I had people like my dad or my wife, or people who love me and care about me and believe that we're walking in God's plans right now for our lives, and you know, would always point me back to that, and just kind of remind me to keep going. And you know, so I would, and kind of encourage me and lift me up, and you know, things would turn around. So one of the things that, you know, with that being said, is just for me, it's always been more the mental part of the game of staying focused on what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve. You know, when I'm pitching, when I'm on the mound, you know, focusing pitch to pitch and having conviction with each pitch and stuff like that. You know, it's easy to overlook those things sometimes, and those types of things are the things that help me, you know, I think, to be consistent. And whenever I'm struggling or not being consistent, usually I'm getting away from it. So
yeah, I mean, listening to you, I think we all may have that moment. But going back to what you said, I remember literally breaking down in my car in '08 and being like, what else do I have to do? Like, I literally don't have anything. I'm completely empty at this point. I feel like I've done everything I'm capable of doing. I'm young in my career, and like I remember praying, Lord, what is going on? Like, yeah. I don't understand. Like, this is not how I envisioned this happening. And you know, funny thing is 2008, you guys had mentioned Kosuke Fukudome. 08, I had finished the 07 year on the playoff roster. I had a start in game 2 of the division series, and the next year I hit 300 in camp. And don't get me wrong, I had deficiencies in my game. Like, look, we all have our stories. I'm not saying that you know, whatever. But the point being is that I'd hit 300 in camp and was told I was going to be in Iowa. I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, and it really rocked me. The funny thing is that Kosuke Fukudome was signed out of Japan to come to play for the Chicago Cubs in 2008, which in essence displaced me and began my path to Japan. And full circle, Kosuke and I ended up being teammates, and with the Tigers. And I remember being in my car and being like, Lord, I don't understand what's going on here. I'm ready to be done with this whole thing. And with all that being said, it was the same story, man. It was like, I just was told, you just have to keep going. I have a plan. Like, don't stop now. And hopefully that resonates with somebody. So anyway, man, you get, again, you bring up these emotions in me and these thoughts that I've had from my own experience. But what about you, Jerry? What about you, man? In respect to all of that.
Yeah, I mean, all of us have had the ups and downs. I mean, you play such a failure game in baseball that it's one of those things that's inevitable. With me, my kind of turning point and really what kind of directed me towards the Asia route was in 17, I made the big league team the year before, and then I obviously got sent down to AAA, but I had a decent year. And then the following year, I couldn't find a job and had to settle to go to indie ball for the first, I don't even know how long, month or two or something. But playing indie ball, I mean, I had a mortgage and kids, and you can't pay your bills, and you want your family to be with you, but at the same point in time, you're like, I was living with a host family, and then my wife would come, so it was just a grind. And my wife and I sat down numerous times and we're like, hey, do I need to hang this up, or, you know what I mean? Is it even worth it? And she was really reassuring to me of just saying, look, let's invest this year and let the Lord take us where he wants to, and use this year, like I said, as an investment into your career. And if it's going to work out, it'll work out. If not, then we can do a lot of other things in life. So that obviously turned into a double-A job, but the double-A job turned into a triple-A job where I had the opportunity to go over to Korea. And that just kind of, even right now, like I mentioned before, getting the Tigers just sent me down to the minor leagues. It's one of those things. It's like, it's not the end of the world right now. Obviously the disappointment sets in for a little bit, and then you're like, look, I'm in a great place with a great organization. And I just got to continue to make myself better. Once again, your kids kind of put it in perspective as well too. It's like you come home and your kids, I mean, they're getting old enough, they understand the game of baseball, but at the same point in time, whether you went 0 for 5 or 5 for 5, they still want you to go to the playground and blow bubbles with them. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that's been a blessing to me too, that it's the perspective of your life, of you are a baseball player, but in reality, the big picture, is it that big of a deal? So that's kind of the thing for me, is just putting the big picture into perspective.
And obviously you have these past experiences, as we all do, that you can draw on. And regardless of where we are, like, either we're coming out of a tough situation, or we may be going into a tough situation, whatever it is. And it doesn't always look exactly like we draw it up, right? As we've talked about. But with that being said, it's like, man, you know what? Like, there's really no other option at this point but to trust, and to continue to move forward. And for you in your own particular situation right now, I experienced being in Nigun. I think it's almost it's a rite of passage as a foreign player there in Japan. At some point, we're gonna be in that situation. But with that being said, I mean, hopefully this is, like we said earlier, you've only had so many at bats, just an extended practice session to get you locked in and ready to go. So anyway, man, thank you for sharing that, fellas. Right. I know that you guys are getting close to ramping up. And what are your feelings right now?
I feel good. I don't mean to kind of beat the drum and say the same thing, but, we feel like God's brought us here for a purpose, and we are just excited to be here. I've been preparing and getting ready and, trying to get innings in and base hitters and stuff like that. Just trying to stay aggressive. For me, I feel like that in terms of pitching is probably the biggest key, because I'm usually most successful when I'm making the hitter swing the bat. So for me, it's just staying aggressive and staying focused. And I'm excited for the season to get going and see how things go. So,
Jerry?
Yeah, the same. Excited to get it going, get a little normalcy of getting to the ballpark and being in the clubhouse and the dugout with your buddies and your teammates, and like I said, the little normalcy of season, and hopefully, obviously, as we move along, the normalcy kind of gets back even more with some fans and some my family's being able to come see the game. So yeah, just excited for another year of baseball.
Outstanding. That's great. Yeah, I for me, listening to you guys, I'm excited. I know how much of an integral role you guys are both going to play in this upcoming year for the Tigers, and I wish both of you nothing but the best, obviously. And I'm always pulling for the Tigers to do well, and I know you guys are going to have a big hand in that this year. So anyway, I enjoyed that segment. It was great. I appreciate you guys being willing to take the time to sit down and chat. But we got to end with our Kansai band lesson here. On this segment, we are going to bochi bochi de na, okay? Bochi bochi de na basically means like I'm doing okay, right? Because we hear guys saying I am genki or I'm zeikocho, which means I'm doing really well. But bochi bochi de na is kind of like, it's going okay. And it's Kansai band for that. So on the count of 3, ichi ni san, we'll do a bochi bochi de na, if that's all right. You guys good with that?
Sure.
All right. Ichi ni san. Bochi bochi
de na.
de na. Nice work, fellas.
Yeah, thanks.